Hello there, what is up everyone? It's Hazmy here with yet another Pathfinder video, and in this one, I specifically dedicate all this information to our brand new Pathfinders who might be struggling with the game or have a hard time, and hopefully these top 10 tips from me will help you get better at the game, have a smoother playthrough, and just generally have more fun with Pathfinder. So let us see, shall we? Number 1. Inspect monsters. In Pathfinder, there is a feature by either pressing the Y button or in the bottom left corner of the screen, the Inspect a Creature button. And after that, if you hover your mouse over a monster, you will be seeing this Inspect Monster screen. And you can even right-click it to attach it to your screen. And this window is possibly one of the most important windows in the game, which is often going to give you more information and sometimes crucial information in defeating your enemies. Not only you're going to see their levels, their name, their alignment, their stats, but you will be able to see their effects, defenses, energy resistances, immunities, and even a whole list of their feats and abilities that they are able to use. This inspect window has saved my playthroughs multiple times, and it's really important to learn and utilize in the game, because sometimes you will meet enemies where you won't be able to bypass their armor. They're just going to be too tanky, and you might have to use your touch attacks such as raise or melee touch attacks from a magus to be able to beat them, or potentially they might just have so low saving throws that you will be able to use a mind affecting spell against them with your Nenio, and potentially use something like Phantasmal Killer or sleep them, and have a much smoother experience killing them. And you were just going to facepalm on how you were bashing your head into the wall, while you could have just utilized your spells against their weaknesses and have a much better time. So definitely, this is my number one tip. Make sure to utilize this and fight the weaknesses of the monsters instead of bashing your head into the wall. And this should be your number one, the number one thing you check against monsters, and really just make a habit out of this, because it's super important. Number 2, fighters. In this one, I would like to talk about some classes in the game. And while I do understand that Pathfinder gives you lots of options to build your character, and they're all extremely exciting, but what I noticed is that, especially the meme of human fighter, that people are not that if they're afraid, but people find fighters very boring and they tend to not choose them. But in Pathfinder, in my opinion, it couldn't be further away from the truth. And in my second tip, I would say, don't be afraid to have a fighter in your party, even if some of your characters are just not a fighters, such as Sela even. Don't be afraid to use Sela as a fighter. I personally love to use Sela as a two-handed fighter, because fighters are really one of the most versatile classes that you can take in the game. Not only they get immense amount of feats and you can build them however you want, but they have a full base attack progression. And are just really one of the easier and one of the strongest classes in all of Pathfinder. You can make the most creative and just really interesting build in the game or character, but sometimes a simple level 20 fighter or a level 18 fighter is able to just dish out so much damage and have so good survivability that it might just not be worth to go another class. So taking a fighter is never a bad idea, and they have some really nice subclasses this time around, like the two-handed fighter or the mutation warrior. Both of them are extremely powerful and are just going to make your time a lot easier in the game, without having to go and look up guides or builds, because fighters just work and are very good frontliners. So that would be my second tip. Don't be afraid to use fighters, as they're very strong, very useful, and you can build them a lot of ways simply because of how much freedom you get through their feats. They can be dual wielding, they can use shields, they can be two-handed, they can be archers. So definitely use them, and you're gonna have a better time, I promise. My third tip would be to utilize spells and use your CC and utility spells What do I mean by this? In CRPGs, and honestly in most RPGs, what I have noticed is that people tend to really just focus on fireballs and damaging spells and just whatever is shiny and just deals the most damage, and just tunnel vision into damage and ignore most of the spells that are not so flashy but can be super useful. In this case, especially in RPGs and D&D and Pathfinder, I definitely recommend you to do not underutilize your spells such as Grease, Entangle from Druid, your Sleep and Color Spray spells, especially on lower level, or even Veb, a little bit higher level, or your Pit abilities. Why is that? Because even though they are low level spells, keep in mind as you level up, they're going to be also stronger, and their difficulty class is going to increase as your level increases. And not to mention that you will be able to take meta magic spells such as meta magic heighten, and you will be able to increase their difficulty class even further. These spells are useful from level 1 to level 20. I mean it. Even at level 20 it can be very useful, except if the enemy has wings or something like gargoyles that are immune to it. Keep in mind that even if they save their throws and they don't get stunned, you're able to create difficult terrain for them, and you will slow them down, and your archers can just simply damage them down while they're slowly getting to you, or you even have time to cast some spells or anything like that. But CC spells can be so powerful, especially against tougher opponents such as the Smilodons here. In this case, I love to use 3 spells even if I have the party for it, but just put down Grease and keep it in mind that these do stack with each other. Well, I think the Grease doesn't stack, but I'm just making sure that everything is spread nicely. But if you put down Web, Entangle, and Grease, that those are going to be separate checks on enemies, and they're going to get 3 checks at the same time. And if you use a Witch with Misfortune Hex on them, they will have to do 6 reflex saving throws per round, and one of them will eventually catch them, even if it's a natural one, and that's going to help you immensely. Like in this case, I'm casting Web. As you can see, my whole party is running into it like idiots, but let's hold person back here. But they are webbed. I can use my Lan, who is already very powerful. It's a very powerful archer. And I can just make sure that we slowly chip them down. And a level 14 enemy, even on my level 6 character, is going to suffer from these. Of course, in this video, I'm using a little bit lower difficulty to just show you how effective this is. But this works even on hard difficulty, core and hard difficulty, probably not on unfair. But the idea is the same, even though they have higher saving throws. And you will be able to beat really tough encounters without actually having to get into danger. So make sure you utilize your CC abilities, because they do work. They're very powerful even until level 20. So that is my third tip. Use your utility spells and not just go for damage. My fourth tip would be to use your buffs. It might be very easy to go through spells or not like to use clerics, wizards, and druids, but the game, especially Pathfinder, relies a lot on buffs, and the difference between a strong and a weak character might be just a few spells. Let us take our Sela, my two-handed fighter, as an example. Sela only has a 23 armor class right now with her armor and the two-handed sword, but we have multiple options that we can do with her. For example, I could reduce her size. That's not optimal for her, but that's still a way to keep her alive. That will reduce her size and give her a size bonus, along with increasing her dexterity. If your armor does allow the dexterity bonus on them, you can put shield on your characters through an alchemist. In this case, especially if you have a cleric, you can boost their armor through magical vestment to enchant their armor to be +1. You can use Shield of Faith to give a better deflection bonus on your characters. Keep in mind that until you have a +5 ring, if you have a full cleric in your party, their Shield of Faith is always going to be better than the ring of protections you find in the game. Um, Along with that, you can also use your wizards, which I absolutely love, to put blur and even displacement on your characters, and that way they're even going to have concealment. Along with that, if a fight has lots of archers, you can use protection from arrows, and they're gonna protect you from all those nasty archers, especially at the beginning that are skeletons, and just really pew pew down your whole team. But as you can see, we had, I think, 23 armor class, right? And now we have a 31 armor class Sela. And trust me that plus 8 armor class is going to be a big difference. So make sure you utilize your spells to defend your party, because it is definitely the difference between an easy and a hard fight. Additionally, you have spells like Resist Fire Communal that if some enemies are casting lots of magic at you, this will completely remove the damage, and instead of taking 15 fire damage on your whole party, you're going to get 0 damage. Or if a necromancer wants to fear your party, with a simple remove fear before the fight, you can make sure that your characters are not going to run away. So make sure to use your spells to buff your characters. Additionally, you do know that there are belts in the game, such as Belt of Incredible Strength that gives you enhancement. These are fantastic, but keep it in mind that you can use your own enhancement spells, such as Cat's Grace that gives you +4 enhancement bonus to dexterity, so it gives more than these basic belts, or it's the same type of enhancement bonus, and instead of using those belts, you could actually use a different belt and have more benefits to your characters. This goes the same for amulets, for natural armor, or ring of protections, and these spells will allow your character to have more unique magical items instead of having to waste them on items which give you buffs that you can get from spells. So make sure you are buffing your characters, because especially Pathfinder is heavily focusing on buffs. I know it might take some time every time you have to buff your characters, but it's very important. If you really are impatient, there are mods out there like Auto Buff that will always cast all the buffs on your characters and use up your spells from your spellbook, but at least your characters will be buffed up. Number 5, Teamwork Feats. Teamwork Feats are special feats in the game that I think a lot of people just glimpse over. Well, they're one of the best and honestly my favorite kind of feats in the whole game. Teamwork feats have yellow background and you can take them with your normal level ups. And they're, especially Shake It Off being one of my favorite feats in the game. What do? Generally, what teamwork feats are is that they do not work alone when only one character has them, so you at least need to have another character in their vicinity that has the same feat. That means, in the case of Shake It Off, when you are adjacent to one or more allies who are also having this feat, you gain +1 bonus on saving throws for such ally to a maximum of 4. Yes, you've read it right. You can take this at the beginning of the game with 4 characters or even 6, so keep in mind this works on your whole party. It's just it maximizes at +4. So you take Shake It Off with everyone and you are going to have +4 on all of your saving throws throughout the game. So if you were having a rough time against those nasty Vescavor swarms or any swarm enemy or the stuns from rocks, I really recommend taking Shake It Off. Even at level 3 or even level 5, this is gonna be what your most important feat in the game. I honestly don't have a single playthrough without taking Shake It Off. By far, this is one of the best feats in the whole game, so make sure to get it. Along with Shake It Off, there are other very useful ones such as Outflank, which is very good for melee characters. As you know, if 2 melee characters are attacking one enemy, then you are getting a +2 flanking bonus to your attack rolls. With Outflank, this flanking bonus increases to a +4. In addition, whenever you score a critical hit against a flanked creature, it provokes an attack of opportunity from your ally. So if you're doing a critical hit against such creatures, all your melees next to you will also do an attack of opportunity on the enemy. Along with this, there are also other defensive teamwork feats such as back-to-back or shield wall. Back-to-back, for example, while you are flanked, so more than one creature is attacking you, and you're adjacent to an ally, and this adjacency is fairly long, so don't worry about it. You will receive a +2 circumstance bonus to your armor class against attacks from opponents flanking you. So again, it's going to make you tankier. Shield wall is very similar, that your character's shields give each other bonuses. So make sure to use Teamwork Feats, because every single playthrough I use them, they're very, very powerful. And don't be afraid to take them on all the characters. It's definitely not a waste. They're one of the strongest feats in the whole game, and they're definitely going to make your party stronger. So use Teamwork Feats. My next tip are about witches and shamans, and more precisely hexes. Hexes are a new type of abilities that were added in Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, and they're one of the new favorites for lots of people. I personally don't like them that much, but I can't deny that they're one of the most powerful abilities in the whole game. So let's see what they are. Hexes are abilities that most of them you can use once per day against an enemy. So that means you can use them at least once against multiple enemies, and I think multiple times as well. A witch cannot select an individual hex more than once. Sorry, that's not the one I wanted to check. Whether or not the save is successful, a creature cannot be target of this hex again for one day. So yeah, most of the hexes you can only use once on a creature for a day. So most of the time you only have one chance to use them. But there are some others which are really useful and can just use on your character for multiple times. But what are these abilities that are so powerful? When you're going to be recruiting Ember at level 3, she's already going to have Slumber. What is Slumber? It is a hex with a DC of 16 right at the beginning that can put creatures to sleep. At this point, that plus 16 difficulty class on a sleep is extremely high, and you will be able to put most enemies at sleep, and such. You will be able to coup de grace them or just remove them from the fights, and it's just really gonna make multiple fights very, very excuse me, very much easier. Vulnerability Curse is also very useful. This hex lasts for a number of rounds equal to your level, while all energy resistances and immunities, so fire resistances and all that, are completely suppressed on an enemy. And whether or not, and this is the most important part about hexes, doesn't matter if they save or not, it's going to last for at least one round. What does this mean? That even if it's impossible to affect a creature with this, it's gonna work, because if they fail their saves, then you're going to apply this for multiple rounds. But if they are saving their throws, then it's still going to apply for a round. So what can you do? You can apply this every single round, and it's going to work no matter what, and there's nothing they can do about it. Like such as Slumber, you can only use once, but such as Vulnerability Curse, they're hexes that you can use over and over and over again, and they're going to be very useful. One such useful ability is Protective Luck. And what does Protective Luck do? Protective Luck you can put on your any of your allies, and whenever that creature is targeted by an effect that requires an attack roll, including weapon attacks, the attacker must roll twice and take the worst result. What does this mean? If you place this Protective Luck on your tank, the enemy will have to roll their dice, their d20 dice, twice and choose the worst result. This means that every single time they hit you, you basically have 2 chances of avoiding it, and it's going to make your front lines much, much better. And as you level up, these hexes become much better as well. And Protective Luck you can use over and over again. It doesn't have its once per day limit. Additionally, of course, there's lots of good ones, so I won't be going through all of them. Ice Blend gives you a +2 natural armor bonus, just like you can see in most of my builds, which is very, very powerful. You can put Misfortune on an enemy. That's the same, that all their rolls they have to do twice. So that's targeting specifically an enemy. Or there was one other thing I wanted to show, which is Fortune. That's using on your character so that you can re-roll your attack rolls or saving throws, or even your ability checks. This is of course once per day, but again, for one round you will be able to re-roll all your attacks twice. Extremely good, especially when you're fighting bosses. So hexes, as you can see, are very, very powerful. And as of course, people's favorite is Evil Eye. What is this hex? This hex you can use infinitely. It does not have a limit. And if they fail, then it's going to apply for multiple rounds. But if it succeeds, then they're still going to get the effects of Evil Eye for 1 round. With Evil Eye, you can choose to remove either 2 from their armor class, or your attack, or their attack rolls or saving throws of enemies. So you can actively debuff an enemy to be to have a less chance to attack you, or to have less chance to defend against you, or to have less saving throws even against your spells. So if you wanted to use Phantasmal Killer on a boss, for example, with your Nenio, but they have high saves, then you can lower the save with Ember, -2 at the beginning and -4 after level 8, and you will be able to pretty much just use any spell, or maybe have a better time at attacking the opponents, or just be tankier by giving them less attack rolls. As far as I know, but I can't confirm this, if you have 2 witches, these even stack. So you can remove -8, which is brutal, but I can't confirm that. Even then, Evil Eye alone is very, very useful, and just going to help you a lot throughout the game. Now, you might ask why I don't like witches. That's because they're very micro intensive and they're not very spectacular. So I don't deny that they're powerful. The reason I don't like to use them, because it gets very boring very fast. It's very effective, but you have to click these buttons and spells every single round, and you really just get number results. They're not very spectacular, and I do like creative and flashy things, I won't deny. So it's not very flashy, but hexes are very powerful. So make sure, if you like Ember, or if you're using Camellia as a shaman, use hexes. They're very powerful. Make sure to read all the hexes and use these, especially Fortune, Misfortune, Ring of Protection, or Protective Luxori, and Evil Eye. They're very, very strong, so make sure to use them. And thus we arrive at number 7, which is about pats. Now, pats are very powerful. Lots of people like to use them, and there are lots of classes that do get free pats, even from level 1 or from level 4, where then you can use Boon Companion to increase their levels. In this case, for my very first playthrough, I did use a dog, and frankly, they're just extremely powerful. So why are pets very useful? If you're struggling with the game, or you just want more frontliners, you don't have enough warriors, fighters, paladins, whatever you need in the front lines, you can get a character such as Hunter, or Mad Dog Barbarian, or any of the pet classes like Sacred Huntsmaster, and you can make really tanky and very useful pets in the front lines. You can either make them offensive or defensive, especially now that you can level your pets up compared to Kingmaker and choose proper feats and even have armor for them. Yes, in this game now you can give them armor. Look how amazing he looks with all the armor. He's not fully buffed right now, but you can have really nice armor class on them. And in this case, the way I built my with my dog is I made them a tripping character. So every time they would attack, they would be able to put the enemy on prone and just CC the enemy. So pats, very easy way to increase your frontline effectiveness and keep those nasty monsters away from your casters and rangers. So if you really need more characters, you can always use pets. Or even if you just have a hard time with the game, pets will be able to make it easier. So don't be afraid of using pets. And once you're more comfortable, you can always try to go back to characters without them. And we're getting pretty close to the end, but my number 8 tip is to experiment. Do not be afraid to experiment in the game. Pathfinder and D&D and all these CRPGs are mainly games of knowledge. Playing these games more and more every single hour is going to increase your chances at getting better at the game, knowing what to do, and know how to deal different situations and how to deal with enemies. I don't deny there's some skill to it, but these are mainly, I would say, 90% knowledge games. And really, the more you read, the more you try, the more you experiment, the better you're going to be at these games. So what do I recommend? Don't be afraid to try out different classes. No need to go for the classes that build say, or the game say, or any of the guides say, not even my guides. Go for whatever you fancy. All of them are good. None of the classes are useless, and I mean it, especially on lower difficulties. In these videos, I really am not talking about super high difficulties, and they shouldn't really be any of the basis of comparison in the game. Try out everything and know what are good abilities, what are good classes, what works, what doesn't work. I'm just gonna give some examples. You can absolutely make Lan a druid. You could make Lan even a sorcerer. Yes, there's Imperial Sorcerer, if you didn't know, that scales from wisdom, and he has really high wisdom. You can make a Mad Dog barbarian out of Venduag. Or yes, you could make an alchemist out of Vol'jif. He's really, really good even as an alchemist. Or you can make Vol'jif even a wizard. As a level 3 rogue, he's still not going to lose out on all the spells. So if you switch immediately to wizard, he can have all the level 9 spells. Or yes, even Nenio, you could try to make a student of war Nenio that scales in melee from intelligence. Really, really fun. Yes, a sorcerer Ember can work as well. A Bard Sela even, or a Fighter Camellia, an Aldori Defender Duelist, and an Aldori Sword Lord a Camellia. So make sure to try everything out. You will never know what works until you try them. There are so many awesome ways to play the game. So you don't need to go for what's the best, because there are multiple ways to play these games. There are multiple ways to get past difficulties. So experiment, try new things, because there are multiple ways to overcome challenges. So that is my number 8 tip: to experiment and try new classes, because there's so many fun ways to play the game that you will really just go and play another game before you can really finish everything the game has to offer. Number 9, run. It is as simple as it is written here. My tip here is you don't have to fight everything in the game. In fact, most of the optional fights are so meaningless, they barely give experience, that you don't have to do them. Not only that, but lots of these optional fights, you can just come back later and kill these enemies, such as the Playful Darkness, that are really almost impossible to defeat when you first meet them. But you can just come back later when you're high level, you're not missing much, and you will be able to defeat them. Really, there aren't a lot of items which are absolutely necessary to the game, and your characters and your abilities have everything that you need. So absolutely, you do not need to fight everything. There are so many high-level encounters in the game that you're not supposed to meet with your level 6, level 7 characters, and you're absolutely just going to get destroyed. And there's no chance whatsoever for you to be able to win those fights, because simply they're just so high level. There's nothing you can do about it. Of course, in this video, I specifically didn't try to fight them very well. This is the same fight we used earlier, but just in imitating on how strong these enemies can be, it's a lot better to just run away, not frustrate yourself over and over, and see the game over screen, because it's in most cases there's really not much you can do. And as I said earlier, this is a game of knowledge. The more you play, the more you will know about the game, and it's going to help you in your future playthroughs on how to beat these enemies. So if you meet something super high level, feel free to come back later. It's going to be much easier. Even one level can be the difference between a hard and an easy fight. So feel free to avoid enemies. You don't need to kill everything. It's an RPG. Sometimes it's okay to avoid fights. And thus, we have arrived to my final tip, and this is possibly my most important message and tip in this video, and just generally for the genre. That is about difficulty. And I would like to talk about this a little bit longer, but not too long. I don't want to rant too much about it. But in this message, what I specifically want to say is that feel free to lower the difficulty or increase the difficulty or whatever you prefer in the game. It is a massive difference. And not only that, but keep in mind that these games were designed with numbers in mind. They were not designed with action. They were not designed with skill. They were designed with numbers in mind. And that means that you're supposed to overcome these numbers through using different spells, using different characters, or using different methods of fighting them. But sometimes, if the numbers are too inflated, which in my opinion, such a difficulty such as Unfair is, it's going to remove 80% of the game, literally, and you won't be able to use more than half of your spells. More than half of the classes will become completely useless. You will have to use methods that are repetitive and unfun, or you will have to use characters. You will be forced to use builds which are not necessarily fun, or just builds that are working here. So as the game says, your builds must be no less than perfect. You have to play perfectly. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a better player. It means you are forced to use characters that are working on this difficulty. And that's not always the sign that you are playing better at the game or anything. It's really just a number game, and it's not necessarily going to be a lot more fun. But enough of unfair. What I mean about difficulty is, again, this game is a game of knowledge. If you can't defeat an enemy on core, maybe lower the difficulty and see how they become easier. See how they change then, and what you might have to do. Or really even, you might just have more fun in a lower difficulty. Nowadays, especially as years go by, I feel difficulty in games are really getting fetishized, and people put so much meaning behind what difficulty they beat the game, and compare others and shame people for what difficulties they play on. But forget that these games are initially made for fun in mind, that you have fun. Who cares if someone plays on lower or higher difficulty than you? What really means is having fun. You can play unfair and reload 50 times a minute and bash your head against the wall. But if you're not having fun, then the person who's playing on story and is having laughs and having a fun, smooth time in the game, in my opinion, is at least objectively having a better time. So what I'm trying to say here is, play the difficulty that you're having fun with. It can be unfair, it can be story, it can be normal. Make sure to use the difficulty that you enjoy on, because really the game works on all difficulties, and it really just changes the playstyle that you have to use. And I would like to say the same for builds. Just because a character is made for unfair, it doesn't mean that's a better character than you can make for normal or even casual, because the rules change. So a character can be a lot stronger on normal because they don't have to go through all those stupid loops to be able to survive the harder difficulties, and vice versa. But what I'm trying to say is, feel free to change the difficulties, because in the end, the game is about having fun. And the more you're gonna play, even on lower difficulty, you're just gonna get that experience, and you're naturally gonna be able to see which difficulty you enjoy, or if you want to increase or lower the difficulty, and just generally enjoy the game more. So don't be afraid of choosing the right difficulty for you. It's very important, and it can really sour your difficulty if you're just trying to bash your head against something. It can really sour the experience if you're just bashing your head against a difficulty that's just not enjoyable for you either. So that would definitely be my last tip. So feel free to change difficulty as you go on with the game. There's no shame in it. Achievements are just for you. No one's competing with anyone. You're only competing with yourself and your own enjoyment. So you can only ruin the game for yourself. But either way, everyone, that was my video with my top 10 tips on how to get a better experience and smoother experience with Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. I hope it helps. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section. You know, all that YouTube stuff. And of course, I also stream on Twitch every single day with Pathfinder content. So feel free to check me out over there as well. And today's message for you guys would be, or rather question is, today I asked everyone if you guys would be interested if I would also cover Baldur's Gate 3 when it comes out, or potentially check out early access and make similar videos and gameplay live streams for Baldur's Gate 3. So let me know in the comment section. I would really appreciate it. Would you like to see Baldur's Gate 3? With that said, everyone, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you all the next time. Bye-bye.